John McMullen from 97.3 ESPN.com. There's a lot of NFL news and notes today. John, how are you?
Doing well. Welcome back, Mike. Tan, rested, and ready, I assume?
Tan is the word. Yes, I am tan, rested, and ready to go. I see that the NFL did not take any time off while I was away, though.
No, they never do. They always I think there's the Eagles especially, more so than even the league. I think they have this mentality that if they're not on the back page of the sports section, that something's wrong, and they're always doing something, and we've seen it in this offseason.
Let's look at a couple of things before we get to the Eagles. NFL moved the touchbacks to the 25-yard line, John. Is this kind of the precursor to them eliminating the kicks, or is there some strategy involved with why they did this?
No, in fact, I don't think they even realized the strategy aspect of it, because it's all safety related, and typically with the NFL, they don't think two steps ahead, and if you sort of move the touchback from the 20 to the 25, what you're doing is encouraging more of those so-called mortar kicks where you go for the high hang time and try to pin the guys inside the 20. And obviously, if you start doing that more, it becomes the opposite of what it was designed to do. And it's a live play again, and that doesn't help the safety of the game. So to me, it's typical of the NFL. They really only look at things in a linear fashion, and they don't look at the law of unintended consequences, so to speak.
Yeah, so
they never do it. This is another example of it.
Yeah, so, I mean, just so people are wondering, well, what's the strategy here? You know, you kick the ball short, you can try to go down there and defend so they don't get out to the 25. Now, if your kicker kicks the ball out of the end zone, teams are going to get the ball at the 25-yard line. So it almost is as if you want to try to take a chance to get them before they get to the 25-yard line.
Yeah, and exactly. If you think about an end-of-the-game situation, 5 yards could make all the difference in the world when you're talking about a potential field goal. So that makes it that much easier to go down and get a game-winning field goal. And if you have a good kicker, a guy who is very able to place the football where he wants to, you're going to see a lot of those high hang time mortar kicks where they try to kick it outside the numbers to one side or another and pin the guys inside the 20, as you said. And obviously, if you have a live football play, the whole designation of this rule is to get what the NFL has declared as the most dangerous play in all of football, and that's a kickoff, because you got guys running full speed at each other from a long distance. They've made it more dangerous. So, again, it's kind of specious thinking from their standpoint.
NFL News and Notes with John, and they also put this rule in, John, that after 2 ejections, players would be ejected from the game. There's been a lot of polarizing discussion on this one. Did they make a mistake? Well,
it's silly more than anything else. It wasn't needed. Last week, before the meetings this week, they had a conference call that sort of briefed the media, all of us, what were the potential rule changes. And they talked about this one because it was the most high profile. And they said if it was in play last season, it would have been used twice. So I asked myself right off the bat, if something is only going to be used twice, what is the point? Aren't you over-legislating the game, as they're wont to do? And this is just another indication of that. 2 unsportsmanlike conduct penalties. It's not going to happen that often. It's an overreaction to the Odell Beckham Jr. game against Carolina when he should have been thrown out. They're trying to eliminate that, but you open up a whole Pandora's box, because now you're going to have other teams trying to sort of do what, if you remember Pittsburgh against Cincinnati in the playoffs, Mike, you had coaches trying to antagonize the Bengals on the field. You're going to see more of that. So it's one of those things that was put in play for 1 year. They'll revisit it. I think it wasn't a necessary rule. I don't think it'll come into play that often. But the part that it's so rigid and you can't use common sense, I don't like that aspect of the rule.
The league tabled a proposal, John, from the Ravens to expand instant replay to review penalties. Now, I know some fans might say, yeah, some of these officials are so bad. Now, 8 specified penalties were excluded, which include holding, pass interference, illegal contact, illegal use of the hands, whether a forward passer has been forcibly contacted, whether a defenseless receiver has been forcibly contacted, whether a kicker has been forcibly contacted, and unsportsmanlike conduct. So the Ravens wanted to have some penalties reviewed. The NFL tabled that. Should they have?
Well, I think they should have, because let's face it, there's going to be a human element to the game.
But if those were the penalties,
part of it.
John, if those were the penalties, the one that really sticks out is pass interference, the offensive pass. What penalties do they want to review?
Well, exactly, and that's the point. If you're not going to review that one, it's meaningless, because that's the one penalty all fans, by and large, that I speak to have an issue with. And if you think about how it can change the game, if you have a 40-yard pass interference down the field that is just a ticky-tack call or just blown, if you can't overturn that, what's the point? Because that's really that can shift the game and negatively affect the outcome of a particular game. And the one thing, there's only 2 things you want from an officiated game, in my estimation, in the NFL or any sport, really. And that's, you want them to be as equal as possible to both sides, and you want the players on the field or the court or the ice to decide the games and not the officials or the referees. That's it. And you want to get as close to that as possible. You can't do it perfectly, but in the NFL, the big issue is pass interference calls. And if you're not going to put that on the table, it's really a moot point, and it's another meaningless effort at over-legislating the game.
Yeah. John McMullen, 97.3 ESPN.com. A lot of stuff today. And by the way, another news and notes from the owners' meeting is that it looks like they've been playing the London game, John. They want to expand now to China.
Yeah, they're going to have 3 games in London next year. They've had that. And eventually I think they want to have a full season in London. But I wrote about the whole thing this week at today's Pigskin.com. If you go back 6 years, it was 6 years ago, really, at these same meetings where Roger Goodell brought up for the first time the number $25 billion, and that's what he projects this league's revenue to be by 2027. And to do that, the NFL has to open up overseas markets, because they've really wrung every last dollar out of the U.S. market, and they've done a tremendous job at it, and they're at about $12 billion a year right now, but there's only so much more you can grow in this market. If they want to reach that goal, they have to open up overseas markets, and China's the biggest one, and that's why you see them moving in that direction. This game, though, does not translate well outside of this country, to be blunt. And one of the reasons why is what we just talked about as far as penalties and as far as how difficult this game is to understand. If you didn't grow up with it, it is tough to explain this game to other people. And if you think about the sports that are popular on a world stage, generally soccer, basketball, they're really easy to understand. They transcend language, transcend culture. Football just does not do that. It's going to be very, very difficult for it.
So a lot of stuff on the front at the owners' meetings. Of course, the big one there, the new 25-yard instead of the 20-yard. But also at the owners' meeting, the coaches spoke today, and the NFC coaches speaking to us after this morning. Chip Kelly, one of them. And I guess when you listen to what he had to say, it really lends to the people who felt that the Eagles' front office environment had turned into a circus over the last year or so.
Yeah, it had. He only really substantiated that today. It was a toxic environment. We all kind of knew that. It wasn't news to us, but when you hear him actually come out and admit to it, And really, to me, it has always looked worse on. There's no question. When you think about Chip Kelly, Mike, and you think about Howie Roseman, these are two guys making seven figures a year, acting like children. But as bad as that is, and they can't talk to each other, they can't communicate with each other. Ed Manowitz would be a go-between and go to Howie's office and tell him what Chip wanted. So as embarrassing as that is, the fact that Jeffrey Lurie let it go on is the real problem here. I can't believe he let this go on in this organization for a full year. And he's the guy you have to look at and hold accountable, because it's astonishing the behavior that both Howie Roseman and Chip Kelly used last season. It was just embarrassing on a professional level, on a personal level. You don't have to get along with everybody you work with. I know you and I have had some knockdown drag-outs on the air at times, but we can be professionals and we can talk to each other. I can't even begin to express how embarrassing that is for the Eagles organization.
Yeah, I agree. And then some of the stuff that Lurie said the other day, about, well, we just kind of, it was just kind of wasted years, 3 years in the books, what did we lose from that? It seems that Lurie, very passive-aggressive on the whole situation. And then Kelly today, as you write at 97.3ESPN.com, he admitted there was dysfunction, but he kind of just didn't want to take any accountability for it, which kind of lends to what you're saying, that the owner just let it happen.
Yeah, it really did. And from Howie's perspective, I don't want to let him off either, because if you think about, you just see what he's done in this offseason. This is a guy who's very, very smart when it comes to contracts, and he generally doesn't sign bad contracts. Yet he allowed Chip Kelly to sign all the bad contracts he wanted to.
Well, was he setting Kelly up for failure? Was he saying, all right, I'm just going to keep doing what you're telling me so that I can go to Lurie and say, look, this was your boy. You wanted this guy.
Unquestionably, he was doing that. Unquestionably. Because this is not a guy who is going to make these bad contracts. He's proven that time and time again. He understands this league as far as that goes. There's no way he's signing that DeMarco Murray contract. There is no way he's signing that Byron Maxwell contract. No way he's trading Nick Foles' contract for Sam Bradford's and sending a second-round pick. And he had control over all of these contracts. So the fact that he wasn't stamping his feet in a lot of ways was him just sitting back, and we've talked about this before, giving Chip Kelly enough rope to hang himself, and it worked perfectly. And he's back in control. But that's not a professional thing to do, especially when you're getting paid $1.7 million a year. The fact that you're having these sort of Game of Thrones conspiracies in each end of the building trying to stab each other in the back, Jeffrey Lurie, this lays at the feet of the owner of this team. And to be truthful, Chip Kelly should not be in this organization. Howie Roseman should not be in this organization. Obviously, one of them is, one of them isn't. But by their behavior last year, both of them, they should not be here. But obviously, Jeffrey Lurie has a lot of trust in Howie Roseman, and I think Howie always talks about what he learned.
And let me just throw in, John. You have been a fan of what Roseman's done.
Oh, sure. From a contract sense and cleaning up the mess that he helped create by letting Chip Kelly do the things he did, he's done a really good job. I'm just talking from a purely professional perspective. This is not the way you act in a workplace, and it shouldn't be rewarded to act that way, and that's exactly what happened. So from that perspective, I think it's really, really bad what he did, and we always thought, what I was trying to say is how he constantly talks about what he learned in his year deposed. What he learned was, don't hire anybody who is going to go against you, and he's just going to hire people he's comfortable with. And that's not to say Doug Peterson can't succeed. because he could, but he's not going to hire people that question him.
Yeah, and the whole situation. And then yesterday, Lurie, you know, as you wrote, the way that he spoke, just so laissez-faire, just lacked the sense of urgency of what, you know, this. It felt like he was like, hey, we're still on a quest for this. We'll get it someday, as if, you know, basically just, I guess it would rub the fans the wrong way hearing the way that he just so kind of threw off.
Incredibly out of touch for this fan base. We got to go back to 1960 for a championship in Philadelphia in professional football. So that's 5.5 decades, 55 years. And he's acting like, it was just time. You know, if none of this ever happened in January of 2015 and the Eagles moved forward with Howie as the GM and Chip as the coach, I don't think they were going to make a run to the Super Bowl. They certainly would have been better than they were. But the fact that you're going to look this fan base in the eye and say, it's just time, not that big of a deal, I think that just proved how out of touch he was. And I think he continues to be, because he doesn't realize that people are starting to figure out that he was at the crux of this situation, and he made a really, really bad decision by not putting his foot down at the time and saying, this is going to be the structure. If Howie doesn't like it, you can walk. If Chip doesn't like it, you can walk. But this is the way I want my front office to be. And really, it could rewind further than that and tell Howie, look, you can't fire Tom Gamble, because that's what started this entire thing.
You're not the first person to say that today. Phil Sheridan on earlier said the same thing, that the whole that whole situation, Tom Gamble, has never been explained as to what happened and why he's not here, and that if it doesn't happen, that maybe everything's different.
There's absolutely no question. If Howie Roseman doesn't fire Tom Gamble, Chip Kelly doesn't make his move to grab power. Chip had a lot of confidence in Tom Gamble, had a lot of trust in him, and he had a blow-up with Howie Roseman. Not the first. You can, as I always say, Howie has if he was a hunter, he would have a lot of pelts on his wall, because he's won a lot of power struggles long before Chip Kelly, Tom Gamble being one of them. Mm-hmm. You go back to guys like Jason Light, Ryan Grigson, time and time again, people have not gotten along with Howie Roseman on a personal level, and they've been shown the door. Hopefully he's learned from that this time. We'll see, though. And I don't see any evidence of that yet, but it's too early to tell. From a football perspective, you have to like what he's done, but there's more to it than that. And when you build an organization, you have to be able to work with people. Howie has not proven he can work with people consistently.
Yeah, John, and again, you know, Roseman's done a good job, so this isn't pouring on a guy that we think has done a bad job. It's just a guy that...
No, you know, I've said from day one, I think he's made tremendous strides, and I think he's done an excellent job dumping DeMarco Murray's deal, dumping Byron Maxwell's, flipping first-round picks with the Dolphins, signing some of the free agents he's got. I think he's done a wonderful job trying to start to rebuild this team. It doesn't change the fact that he has been what he has been, and the resume is there as far as getting along with people in the personnel department. He's got a chip on his shoulder because, and pun intended, because of Chip Kelly, but part of it is because football people look at him and say he's not a football guy. And he's got a chip on his shoulder regarding that. Maybe it's fair to a certain extent because people don't give him a chance, certain people, but he's going to have to get over that because that's the position he's in, and you need football people in this organization, and sometimes if they question your acumen, you have to deal with it.
RG3, last one for you, John. RG3, most people think he's going to end up with Cleveland. Will that be the... Will that be the right landing spot for anybody going to Cleveland? Doesn't sound like the right landing spot.
Yeah, not in the NFL. I mean, the Cleveland Browns, they've been the second reincarnation of the Browns has been around since '99. They've made the playoffs once. Just coach after coach after coach, quarterback after quarterback after quarterback. It's been like quicksand for NFL careers. But RG3 is a guy who's got to rebuild it. He's got to rebuild somewhere. And if he gets an opportunity in Cleveland, maybe he can get that team headed in the right direction. Because Lord knows if you do, your stock is gonna rise high because nobody's been able to do it before. And he's gonna get a second chance somewhere. He might as well go for that because I think he'll have an opportunity to start there if he competes and plays well. And I'm not sure that opportunity is going to be in too many other cities.
All right, a lot of news, and I'm sure it will continue. By the way, the Rams will be featured on the Hard Knocks show this year, so you'll get a chance to check in on Nick Foles and see how he's doing out there in his battle with Case Keenum for the starting quarterback position. Oh,
the Los
boy.
Angeles Rams.
This guy was the MVP of the Pro Bowl. He was the best player in the league.
I'll tell you what. I cover the NFL for a living. I've done it for 20 years, and I didn't even know he was the MVP of the Pro Bowl. That tells you what the Pro Bowl means to me. 2013
Pro Bowl MVP.
Oh, you're talking about Nick. I thought you were talking about Case. I did know Nick. Yeah, Pro Bowl. Generally, when you go to the Pro Bowl these days, you're about the eighth alternate at the quarterback position. So who knows? Case might get there.
All right, John. Well, we'll see. That's Hard Knocks, HBO, coming up this summer. We got the owners' meetings, and then I guess there'll be a lull, right? A little bit?
No, the only lull is right before training camp, is that month after mini camp and right before training camp. You got the draft, and then you got OTAs, mini camp. It just never stops.
All right, we'll be all over at 97.3 ESPN.com at JF McMullen. And don't forget today's pigskin for all the national takes from John as well. He's also thrown in some Union stuff on the web stuff for all you Dupe fans out there. I know they come after me all the time, John. So you can make them happy now.
Well, somebody's got to make them happy. Hey, you know what? They draw more than the Sixers, so give them that.
On that note, you're done. All right, pal.
All right, buddy. Welcome back.